Israel's defense chief has called the drone strikes that killed 7 aid workers in Gaza Monday a, quote, grave mistake. The attack on World Central Kitchen vehicles came after the charity's employees had unloaded more than 100 tons of humanitarian food aid. The defense chief, Herzi Halvi, is now saying the incident will be investigated. We're going to talk more about this with our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons, who joins me now live from Jerusalem. Rob, tell us a bit more about what kind of reaction there's been from the Israeli government to these strikes and these deaths.
Well, you mentioned just there the message from a very contrite Herzi Halevi, the chief of staff of the Israeli Defense Forces, saying that a full investigation would be put into place and that something had to be done to improve communication between humanitarian organizations on the ground in Gaza and the Israeli Defense Forces. This was a tragic mistake, he said, and caused by lack of communication. Many don't see it that way, although Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, is certainly putting that spin on it, saying that as far as he's concerned, it was tragic, and he expressed his sorrow, but these things happen in war. And it's true, these sort of things do happen in war, but you need to put in place mechanisms to try and minimize this sort of occurrence. And the accusation coming from the international community is that Israel has not done enough to put mechanisms into place to deconflict in situations like this so that accidents don't happen, or at least very rarely. And already people are pointing out that these aren't the first aid workers to have been killed during the conflict in Gaza. The number is climbing very close now to 200. So the pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, is undoubtedly mounting at the moment, particularly as some in the Israeli media themselves are saying there's more to this than just an error, that there may have been problems of ill discipline on the part of Israeli forces on the ground as well.
So, Rob, you talk about this pressure against Benjamin Netanyahu rising. It's also been almost 6 months since the war began. There's still many hostages being held in Gaza. That's also adding to this pressure and this sentiment that seems to be turning against him.
Yeah, it's hard to measure just how powerful the forces lined up against him are. On the one hand, I think it's fair to say that support in Israel for the war and for the conduct of the war so far has been very strong indeed. Between 70 and 80% of the population in polls say they support what the government is doing and what the army is doing. But on the other hand, Benjamin Netanyahu's personal popularity has undoubtedly been slipping. And one of the reasons for that is the failure of the government to, as opponents of the government will say, to prioritize the release of hostages. And we've seen in the last 3-4 days that begin to crystallize in big demonstrations outside the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, and in the government district around the Knesset as well, calling for Benjamin Netanyahu to step down and for new elections to be held. They undoubtedly regard him as being primarily responsible. And last night, the demonstration started turning violent. As the crowd moved towards Benjamin Netanyahu's, the Prime Minister's residence, there were attempts, apparently according to the police, to break through the barriers. They had to use foul-smelling water, what they call skunk water, and horses to push back the crowds, the demonstrators. And there was a lot of concern expressed by the chief of Shin Bet Internal Security here about that, saying that at this moment it was essential that Israeli society maintain its unity, and this sort of action by demonstrators was not helping.